and it's like there's been this evolution where now you're buying a lot more stuff in SGC slabs. So I guess my question is, what happened?
Well, what happened a year ago?
You had that Grail collection.
No, PSA bought them. And
so did that shift in your mind SGC's validity?
No, but it made it, because I am a set registry guy, the idea was ultimately at some point I would think they will combine their databases into a universal registry of at least of those two companies. And talking to Nat Turner, that's their plan. I don't know. It's probably going to be harder. He's already mentioned how hard it's them even investigating doing that is. And so, but I think they'll eventually figure that out and be able to catalog, because the set registry is more than just doing a set registry. It's checklists. It's, the competition part's mildly fun, but I don't really care where I am. I get curious sometimes, like, oh, where am I on 70s Hall of Famers, tops Hall of Famers? Well, I'm number 7. Well, what it would take to get number 6. And I don't even look, like, I don't even care. But it's a checklist for me. It's a inventory tool for me. I document every time I buy a slab, when I bought it, where I bought it, eBay, the National, Strongsville, what I paid for it. And it's that, and I do it as much for someday. I'm only a steward of these cards. Someday my wife's going to sell them when I'm long gone, or soon after I'm gone, more likely. And she'll have a cost basis for taxes. When I bought a card for $100, she sells it for $200. I don't want her to get taxed on all $200. She can have proof or documentation that I bought it in 2015 for $100 or whatever it was, and so, and I just like to know, when did I buy that? It's, wow, how long have I owned this card? And I look and I'm like, wow, I've owned this card for 12 years or whatever. And man, I'm glad I bought it when I did, because holy crap, right? I couldn't afford that card today. So the SGC thing has been, yes, the Grow collection actually was a huge part of that, but I had already started buying SGC cards before that. It was never that I didn't like SGC. I've always been a fan of SGC, but my collection OCD-ness. I built an entire case to only hold PSA slabs. It won't hold anything else, or it won't hold SGC slabs or Beckett. And so I kind of like everything being uniform and the same. I would still much prefer to buy any card in a PSA slab, all things being equal, than an SGC slab. Mm-hmm. But I'm just more open-minded, I guess. My age is, or
you brought up a topic in there about the set registry and PSA having a set registry and a combined set registry. And I want to show a clip. This one's about 2 minutes, so be patient with me, but I think it's worth watching, of a conversation you had with Peter almost 2 years ago.
Okay.
There's some other things I'd like to see you guys do.
Sure.
I'd love you to see, when's the set registry coming?
Good question. We're going to be making some announcements soon. Now, I want to be clear. A set registry is not going to be announced soon.
Okay.
But we are making announcements soon. Okay. In fact, very soon. We're talking weeks rather than months, and possibly even days after we're back from the show.
Okay.
So things are going to be happening quite quickly.
Okay.
The thing about SGC is it's not stagnation ever. If we're not doing something, it's because we're currently working on other things. And just when you set a bar of doing everything right, which includes turnaround time, accuracy of grading, obviously having a customer experience that's enjoyable, which involves your website and your order flow and things like that. As I said, it is a matter of bandwidth. We're obviously a company that's grown extremely rapidly in a short amount of time, and we're not looking for that to slow down anytime soon. The nice thing, though, is as we've kind of checked these boxes over the past few months and even years, the set registry is coming up real soon, and I could say that when that takes place, we are not going to halfway it. At SGC, we really like to set a high bar for ourselves, and I think that that's the reason, although still not an excuse necessarily, but I think that's the reason that a set registry doesn't exist at this national currently, because we're not looking to just check that box. We want to actually not only bring the hobby something that SGC hasn't offered before, but hopefully give it its own kind of flair where it's something the hobby hasn't seen before at all, meaning including other registries out there. We have a lot of really, really cool ideas. The will is there. It's just really about making it happen. And I can tell you honestly, Mike, that it's going to happen, and we're really at an exciting time where it's coming.
So he said the announcement is going to be coming very soon, and that was July of 2023. Now, I understand that they were purchased in February of 2024, but it's still almost 2 years later. He also said in his announcement when collectors purchased SGC that SGC would continue to be operated independently. So if the excuse of, well, they were purchased by PS or they were purchased by collectors and all that kind of stuff, that's why they didn't do it. It's almost 2 years later, and he said that there was an announcement coming soon, and it never came. What do you think is the holdup for the set registry, Mike?
Well, first of all, somebody needs to do a proof of life welfare check on Peter Steinberg, because he has completely disappeared from the public view of the hobby. Whereas he used to be, I remember going to the National last year. This was, the purchase had already happened by collectors and all the things. And I'm like, well, I just want to chat with Peter. Literally, I wanted to interview him or at least say hi to him. Nowhere to be found. I didn't see him a single time. And I went by the SGC booth intentionally 100 times if I went by there one time. And he was not there at all. And supposedly he was at the show. I never saw him. And so that's not an answer to your question. The answer to your question, I think, is an answer I got from Nat Turner sometime later, which is it's really hard there's a reason there isn't a, master set registry. There's a reason. It is very difficult to get all these, the way every company does it differently. And if you really want to incorporate everything from PSA, Beckett, make this universal type set registry, which is really what I think he was talking about. Something the hobby hasn't seen before, not just a set registry of their own, but one where you can put in other company graded cards into their inventory / registry. That's where I think he was really going with that. And I think they found it to be a very, very difficult task.
Do you think PSA genuinely wants a universal set registry?
No.
So do you think PSA could potentially be blocking a set registry from happening out of SGC or universal set registry?
Potentially. It's their, it's their differentiator, right? It's the thing that makes them who they are because of the legacy of the set registry. And people can, especially new people in the hobby, poo-poo it all the time. You don't understand. These guys have been doing this these mega collectors have been doing set registries for 20 years. It is a embedded part of the hobby, like it or not. And I've been doing it 15 plus years, and so I don't want it to go away. I'd like it to get better. But I don't think they're in any hurry to lose the exclusivity of that and to give up that part of their business that is special for them.
So when Peter says, sorry, Darren, I saw you were about to jump in. Let me throw this out there. When Peter said during the acquisition, we're going to be independent. We're still going to be the fastest turnaround times. We're still going to be, top tier grading. We're still going to be this. We're just under their umbrella. Like, do you think that that's like legit? And the reason I ask you, Mike, is because you've been in this a really long time. And have spoken to Nat personally. And have spoken to Peter personally. And I'm curious on the wisdom that you have and the experience that you have on what you think. Now, obviously, you're not a spokesperson for SGC, so I'm not asking you to do that. But I'm curious on your insight. When they came out with that acquisition and Peter made the statement, and as I'm talking about it, I'm just going to show it. So here, real quick.
Collectors, the global leader in authentication, grading, and collection management products and services, has officially acquired SGC and welcomed us in its family of industry-leading brands. To be clear, SGC will remain an independent grading brand, and no changes are contemplated. Joining forces with the Collectors team will allow SGC to double down on our strengths while greatly enhancing our capabilities to innovate and modernize our offerings moving forward. Our customer service, turnaround time, grading standards, and deep commitment to the community that we serve will not be changing.
Do you think that SGC is an independent grading brand right now?
Let me react to Peter's video. Bullshit. Sorry.
Right.
Look, you can't be absorbed by a place like Collectors and not experience some changes. To say now, certainly they could have for a little while. Okay, you just keep doing your thing. We're going to figure out how we want all this to look, right? And that's probably what happened, right? Okay, we're not here to upset the apple cart. We want to own you, and it's kind of like we'll deal with you later, right? And it's you acquire a high value free agent mid-season. You're not going to screw with their swing, but you might do it in the off season if they re-sign with you. Like, hey, we just need you to do what you do right now, but we're going to try to make you a better player next year because we're going to sign you to a long-term deal or something. That I think is coming. Whether or not they're just not going to do that just for giggles. They didn't just buy it just to own SGC. There's something that's going to happen at some point. And whether it's, all under one, who knows? I genuinely don't know. That's not even something I've been told privately by either one of those gentlemen who are great guys, by the way. Like,
oh yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, it's business.
I mean, we talk way more off camera than we do on camera. The stuff they can tell me officially and the stuff they tell me unofficially. I'm not a journalist, so but at the same time, I want to respect their. If they're going to tell me something kind of on the down low, I'm going to keep that private. And especially if they ask, hey, don't say anything, but this is what we're doing. And that's happened a lot over the years. Nothing recently, truthfully, because they've gone so quiet. They've gone so dark on a whole lot of fronts, both PSA and SGC. So who knows what they're cooking up behind the scenes. Darren hasn't talked in like 10 minutes. So let's.
I know. I do that too.
No, it's fine. No, I think a couple things. One, when Mike was interviewing Peter said an announcement will come out in weeks, maybe months,
maybe days. He said, right?
but not an announcement of a set registry. So, in fairness, maybe he announced that. Let's be honest. At the National last year, Collectors was already in discussions with SGC to acquire them. There's no way that they weren't if the acquisition happened so soon after you interviewed him, right? So, that could have been something that they maybe were going to announce, right? So, legally, he didn't commit to anything other than we're going to announce something in the next couple of days, and it's not going to be a set registry. So, in fairness, but going back to the last video that you showed, a couple companies that I've worked for in my career have acquired a ton of companies, and every single time we acquire a company, I've been for the most part, lucky enough to be, engaged with those folks. And almost every time, from their senior leadership down to their individual contributors, when you first meet with them after the acquisition happens, they say every single time without fail, we're going to keep doing things the way we've always done them. We're going to be independent. There aren't going to be any major changes. Basically, you guys acquired us because of the prestige of our brand, right? And then, 3 months later, 90% of the people that were there are gone. All their leadership's gone. And everything that made that company special or different has been morphed as part of the integration. And they are now fully aligned with, the parent company. So I've seen that happen over a dozen times with, company, obviously not in this industry, but companies in other industries. So it doesn't surprise me that he said that, because I hear that every time an acquisition happens. And then what we're seeing happen is what usually happens, right? People don't put the money up to do acquisitions that big just to keep the status quo, right? There's nobody's funding that, right? You have to get the funding to do deals like that. You have to be able to show some sort of a, significant benefit somewhere. And usually that comes from, some sort of an integration and making changes.
Craig, I wish you had a clip of Jean-Luc Picard when he's assimilated by the Borg and he says resistance is futile, and there's going to be assimilation. There is no reason for them to have overlapping things that are unnecessary and hurt the ultimate bottom line of collectors, and there's some economies of scale that they can bring to bear and other things that maybe there's some resistance to doing it too quick, because it would have just there would have been a massive revolt. I think if PSA or collectors said, we're acquiring SGC, and by the way, you're all getting red flips starting, next Friday, no more SGC stuff, the revolt would have been real within the hobby. And because there are some diehard SGC fans.
Oh, yeah.
And just as it would have been the other way, if PSA had it was the other way around and they're going to get rid of PSA and the look and the feel, I'd be like, traitors, you sellouts. And I can hear it now. The videos would be nonstop about what happened. So I think they're slow rolling it intentionally. But as Darren said, this doesn't happen without assimilation. They didn't just acquire it for giggles, as I said earlier.
I've got one last short clip, and then I have one last question to kind of wrap up this topic. I don't know if anybody else is finding this interesting. I find this topic fascinating. See, this is about a 45-second one.
I am, first of all, super excited that y'all decided to grade on site. How has that been for you guys, finally coming back to that after a few years being off?
Yeah, I'm super excited about it too. I got to be honest, I was a bit nervous. The last time we graded on site, we were a fraction of the size that we are today, doing primarily, really only vintage cards. Today, obviously, we've made such inroads in the modern market, even in the gaming market as well. So we weren't really sure on volumes and kind of what this would be. Choosing a price point was near impossible. We chose to go lower rather than higher. We wanted to lower the barrier of entry for collectors to get their cards graded on site. And I got to tell you, Mike, it's gone incredible. I mean, we're returning cards extremely quickly, graded accurately, not cutting corners. It's truly serving the hobby, as you're seeing behind us.
All right, so here's my question. This interview that you did with him was 7 months before the acquisition. Since then, they're no longer doing on-site grading. I haven't heard of them doing on-site grading anywhere, including last year's national, because this was the 2023 national. So they're no longer doing on-site grading, even though he just said we're returning cards extremely quickly. Seemed like it was going swimmingly. Suddenly, they're not doing that anymore. He, at the same interview in 2023, July, said a registry announcement is coming soon. Not saying the registry is coming soon, but announcement's coming soon. Still hasn't come. They said we're going to continue to be an independent grading brand, but their wait times just doubled in the last 2 to 3 weeks. What I mean, what does the future hold? I mean, should SGC diehards be worried? Because it feels like they waited their year, and now here it goes. Is that what you think is happening? What do you think is happening, Mike?
Well, two things. Number one, I'm going to keep doing YouTube. I'm pretty good at this. I just noticed by me doing that interview, and I've lost a lot of weight since that video. So,
Darren.
Gosh, the wait time increase is probably a function of demand and not a function of, well, let's just be as crappy as PSA is at returning cards. You know, I don't know that that's.
Wait. Let me be devil's advocate, because if you look at the gem rate data, it has gone up, but it didn't like suddenly double. The wait time has doubled, but the amount of cards being submitted hasn't doubled. It has been a very, very steady increase, just like it has for everybody else. So I don't think that the demand suddenly went through the roof and that doubled the wait time. I actually do kind of think PSA maybe made a phone call that said, you're too fast. That's just my tinfoil hat.
Boy, that's tinfoil hat. It could be that maybe they're, here's what we want to think. Maybe they're taking more time and really meticulously grading these cards and really making sure that they're assigning the proper grade to these cards.
Right.
We're going to take more time to do this really good.
You were just talking about economies of scale, and Peter just said that collectors was going to provide them more efficiencies to become better and faster and more productive, not less.
So, devil's advocate on that, though, who knows how good the quality control was at SGC? Collectors might have a higher threshold for quality control, hence to keep everything within those thresholds, it will just take more time.
You think with all the anecdotal evidence that we've seen over the last 2 or 3 years in reveal videos that SGC's quality control is worse than PSA's?
No, I'm just saying hypothetically. But I mean, at the end of the day, if you think about it, right? When a company in general acquires another company, right? They acquire them for what? People, processes, technology, customer base,
efficiency.
Well, yeah, I would put that under processes, financial engineering, right? Like there's a lot of different reasons why you'd acquire a company. We'd have to, for now, we don't know why they acquired them, right? And when we find out someday why they acquired them, then all of this will start making sense, right? If they acquired them purely to get their customer base, then they're not doing what they need to do, right?
But isn't it fun to speculate?
It's tiresome.
I guess. It could drive you nuts, though.
I'm tired of it.
Are you?
Thanks for bringing this up, Greg. I'm so great.
Sorry to ruin your afternoon.
It's all right.
I interrupted your comment, but I mean, should SGC people, and we have a lot of friends in the hobby that are diehard SGC people. Let me ask the question differently. Fast forward 3 years from today.
SGC does not exist.
SGC, the brand is gone. What happens to SGC slabs 3 years from today? I've got cards in SGC slabs, and I have to cross them over for PSA and be reviewed, or did they automatically get a PSA grade because it's a collector's company?
I don't think people will do that. I don't think they'll care.
They'll leave them in the old SGC slab?
Some people will for sure, but by and large, there won't be this gigantic movement to cross stuff over. Just as I'm not crossing over old slabs, I'm not going to get the, hologram lighthouse label, right? I don't care. If it's in an old slab, it's in an old slab. Fine. If it gets cracked, whatever, that's a different story. But
what does that do to the value of SGC slabs if SGC is no longer a brand?
But does that take away from the service that they provided when they provided it?
No, I'm not suggesting that. I'm asking, what does it do to the? Yeah. So you think it just stays the same?
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to have a huge impact, right? I think the grading companies were people are negative, like significantly negatively impacted, were ones that went out of business because of like, you know, inability to, you know, gauge, you know, a card's real or not, or inability to gauge whether or not something's trimmed or touched up. Like they're not out of business because they sucked, right? And cards in those slabs have a risk of not being authentic or being trimmed and not being like called out as trimmed, right? Those companies slabs are the ones people are like, crap, they're worth less because, you know, of their reputation. If SGC goes away, it's not going away because they failed at doing their job, right? They went away because the parent company decided to just roll their operations into their existing, right? It's not, hey, there's this big story coming out that SGC, you know, is letting a bunch of fake cards through, right? Like that's not the issue. So I don't think it's going to be as impactful, right? It's like, you know, it's like Beckett slabs right now, right? Like, you know, if you have a great card in a Beckett slab, people aren't saying, oh, it's you know, there's a problem with it because it's in a Beckett slab. It's just, it's in a Beckett slab, right? It's not like it's a GAI slab or something.
All right. I'm very fascinated with you. I was not expecting you to say, Mike, that in 3 years that you didn't think SGC would exist. Let me ask you a different question. 2 years from today, does SGC exist?
What about 1 year?
No,
Yeah,
well,
right.
we're getting there. We're working our way there. 2 years from today, does SGC exist?
No.
Okay. 1 year from today, does SGC exist?
Yes.
What's the time? What's the over under? What's the Vegas over under
18
of
months.
time from now and when they pull the ripcord in your
18
crystal ball? 18?
So I'm thinking national 2026, maybe shortly after that. Shortly before or
And
shortly after.
where do you fall in this, Darren? What do you think
I
SGC
think
will be
Mike's-
around?
Yeah, I think what Mike's saying makes sense, right? Like when they acquire them, they can't just kill them, right? Let's say hypothetically the goal was to just kill them and just
My head is exploding
you,
right
you
now. but
can't
go
do
ahead.
that though, right? Because you have to get all of it's not just saying, hey, you know, you're gone. It's hey, you have operations that then have to, you know, your people that are, you know, theoretically good people do know what they're doing, right? We want to bring them over so that we need to cross train them on how we do it. You have your financial systems, you have your operational systems, right? You have to, you know, migrate all of that to collectors before you can kill SGC. There's a lot of just like really heavy lift integration pieces that have to happen. So I would assume that they can't just kill them for probably, you know, at least a couple of years to, you know, 2 to 3 years from when the acquisition happened, just for that reason.
So you think SGC is also dead on arrival, Darren?
From what I've seen outside of this industry, yeah.
And what is your Vegas odd date on that happening?
I would say 2.5 to 3 years from when the acquisition finalized.
So you're like the
About
same
18 months
spot as
from
Mike.
now.
Yeah. So yeah, about 18 months from now.
Wow, man. I mean, I'm not. This is going to be interesting, but if you would have told me a year ago or 6 months ago, I'd have said, well, nothing is leading me to believe that they're going to kill it off. But no registry, no on-site grading, slower wait times, prices certainly aren't coming down. That it's leading me to believe that they're trying to take away, or maybe I should say, the things that were the competitive advantage that SGC had are slowly eroding, and the areas that they were planning on catching PSA have been executed. And that doesn't speak well about the future. Super interesting. Yeah, go ahead, Darren.
I don't disagree with that, but I would say I don't necessarily think that collectors is saying, hey, SGC, it would be good if you shit the bed in all of the different categories you're good at. What I think is probably happening is SGC or collectors are saying, hey, we acquired you, we spent all this money on you. you need to improve your margins. So how do you improve margins? Everything else gets crappier, and you charge the same amount of money, and your margins go up, right? I mean, longer wait times, less customer experience related things. They don't invest in other things, right? It's how do we squeeze the most profit out of the revenue that we're bringing in, and that's like a incredibly common. Like almost every time a company's acquired, that's guidance that they're given, right? Like I don't know any company that's acquired by, and Nat Turner's he's done some big like private equity type stuff in the past, right? And I don't know a single I work for a private equity backed company right now. I'll tell you, never once are they interested in like, oh, what's the HR policy to improve, employee experience over the next, 6 years. It's how are we going to cut costs to the extent we could cut them without cutting into too much muscle and not hitting the bone, right? It's how do you minimize what we spend to run operations to the extent that you're not screwing up your customer experience so bad that you're bleeding, like your customers are going away in droves, right? As long as you can keep the majority of the customers for considerably less spend, find that balance. And that's the guidance that they're given. So I don't think I don't think Collectors is telling them to do any of this per se. Maybe they are, but I don't think they are. I think it's just, hey, we acquired you. We have different expectations of, profitability than what you guys were used to prior to the acquisition. You need to fall in line with that.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That makes a lot of sense to me. Is your margin needs to be this, and right now it's this, and the thing that was their competitive advantage were those things that they had to cut to make those margins higher.
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, it wouldn't surprise me at all if Peters has a legitimately large bonus tied to hitting some margin over some period of time. And one of the things I've seen in my career is you can have somebody who's like super customer focused executive, loves it. They get to a certain level and suddenly a lot of money is on the line to cut costs. They will still love the customer, but they're cutting costs, right? So none of this surprises me. I just, I think, and the upside is I don't think they made a lot of, they haven't come out and said, hey, we're going to do X, Y, and Z since the acquisition, right? Since the acquisition happened, they really kind of slowed down, promising anything. Sorry, my daughter was leaving to go to my ex's house. So,
hi, honey. Love you.
So I don't think they're promising. Like if they came out and promised like tomorrow that they'll have an SGC registry coming up, that would surprise me, right? Because there's a big cost to that. I think they promised a bunch of stuff. They were acquired. They said the normal, boilerplate. We were acquired, but don't worry. Blah, 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 blah. And then now they're being integrated, and this is just what happens. I don't think there's any sort of like, guy twisting his mustache in the back. I just think this is just standard, what happens when you see, M&A stuff going on within an industry.
Yeah, we're so nostalgic about the hobby. We're sentimental about it.
Right.
This is a business.
Yeah.
Make a lot of money. And we don't know what Collectors paid for SGC because it's a private company. They didn't have to disclose that. It was a lot. I'm sure it was a ton of money. They backed the truck up to buy SGC. And in order to do that, because that was the only way SGC would sell. Why would they? They were growing and building, and I have an offer. There's a number. You could have everything in here, right? There is a number. As much as I love cards, there's a number that I would go, yep, I'll start over, and they had a number too. It was probably a really high number because they were happy with what was going on. And, I talked to Peter's boss at the National multiple years in a row. Super great guy. And none of it on camera. Like he didn't want to be on camera or anything.
Sure.
Very private guy. He really owned SGC. Peter was the face of it, but this guy owned it. And I promise you, he had a number, and PSA said, all right, Nat Turner said, I'll write the check. Let's go, and look, you can call them cop-outs, whatever. Every one of us would have made the same decision if that many zeros were thrown in front of us. I can guarantee it.
Yeah, and that's, I agree with you, Mike. It's hard. It's hard for people that it's hard for us as collectors that depend on this, and we're like, hey, this is important for our hobby, to view it as a hobby. These guys are pretty legit. I mean, I wouldn't say cutthroat, but you know, these are high level, like hardcore business guys that are doing this for money, right? I mean, maybe Nat has a passion for it, so it's just that's kind of cool that he's able to acquire a company that does something in a hobby that he's passionate about. But at the end of the day, none of these guys are doing this stuff for to make our life easier or make us happier, right? They're doing this because we pay them for their service. As long as we're happy enough with their service to continue to pay them, they will keep doing things to maximize the amount of the $50 fee we pay them that they are able to keep as profit.
Yeah,
That's
this
what
is
they're doing.
our hobby. This is our hobby. This is their business, and those are just things that don't jive up very often. You know, there's competing loyalties there and desires for that. I want the best service at the cheapest possible price. They want the most price they can get. And that's what they've been doing. That's what they were doing after COVID, is when they were lowering prices of grading. You notice they didn't just jump. They didn't gap down, right? They were slowly, methodically moving to a level where they go, okay, right there is where we're going to get max capacity. We're going to be at max capacity and how much we can grade, and we're going to maximize our profit. And that's $20 or $25, whatever it is right now. I don't even know, because my last submission for cards was to SGC at Strongsville. So I like $15. And that's how I am as a hobbyist. I want the cheapest, fastest option. Well,
yeah,
that's not how they're thinking. We like to think they think that way, as Darren said. Unfortunately, it's just not true. What other off topic? Are you gonna have to break this into two parts, Darren?
No, I mean, I've never. This is the longest off topic of all time.
It is.
And it's it's one of those things where we could go in so many different directions from here, but I think it's probably best to just tie a bow on it, and maybe at some point when something happens, because something's going to happen with these, that we come back and go, well, how do we do it? Greg, pull the clips from this conversation. It'll be interesting. And I like competition. And I believe that competition breeds improved service, lower prices, better quality. And so my biggest concern when this all went down was competition just went off the side of the road. Because the two companies that I went to the most, in fact, the only two I've ever submitted to, both just became one, and this is not going to go well. And here we are about 14 months later, and it could have gone worse, but it certainly could be going better. So with that, Darren, final thoughts? Mike, final thoughts?
It was great seeing you guys in Strongsville. Looking forward to the national.
Me too.
You're 100% right about competition being good for the consumer. It's the worst thing for the business. And so you're always going to have those competing forces, right? And if somebody wants to come up with a better way to skin the cat and do a grading thing, people have tried it. There's a high barrier of entry, high cost of entry. It is, look at TAG and HGA, and I could rattle off a dozen grading companies that have come, and Arena Club, right? Name your tune. None of them. It's so hard. Like, start a search engine, see how that goes for you against Google. Good luck with that, right? Start creating microprocessors. NVIDIA is going to just drown you out, and that's the nature of business. It's not fun for us as consumers. I like competition too. And I will leave it with, yes, it was great to see you guys. I am so honored to finally get to, you guys slumming it with some of the older guys in the community on off topic. I feel privileged. So thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Mike. Appreciate
Yeah,
it.
thanks for coming on. And it was great seeing you guys in Strongsville and being reminded of how great this community is. And as soon as we enter the room together, it's like you just pick up where you left off. It's just razzing each other. It's having fun. It's laughs. It's hugs. It's handshakes. So it's very cool, and very much looking forward to. Well, I guess National this year straddles July and August, so we've got right about 3 months and a week or
Hold
so.
on, I'll tell
So,
you. I've got it on my
I
phone.
mean,
It
you got
is
the countdowns.
96 days.
There you go.
96.24 days to be exact
Nice.
on my phone.
Awesome. Well, I will see you both there, God willing. And if you're still listening, we appreciate you. This was a long one. Will I break it into 2 parts? To be determined, maybe.